In the mid-1990s, you and Pam wrote a chapter, Reflection as a Tool for Turning Service Experiences into Learning Experiences, in a book published by ASCD. Reflection seems to be at the heart of what you teach about, the way that you work and you design workshops. What is the power of reflection, and what are some of your favorite reflection approaches?
Okay. The kind of funny answer is I'm not good enough to carry an audience. And so I've got to get them talking and get them thinking in that. And I actually do keynotes now and do find it, but for several years there, that was harder for me. And I think I've learned more of the magic of doing that. But where I'm really comfortable is engaging people in their own thinking and with each other. It's one of the unique human capabilities is to be able to look at ourselves, and reflection ties into something that's at the core of probably who I am, which is I'm very interested in depth. There's a lot of life that's a mystery, even about ourselves, let alone about other people in the world we live in. And so reflection gives you multiple opportunities through art and writing and group discussion and different ways to stop and think. We used to call it in peer helping inside-out education. It was that idea that if you knew what everybody else in the group knew and put it together, you would be a really wise person. And so an example of that was we used to do what often were very powerful sessions on the topic of death and dying as peer helping. And the object of that is to help people understand more of what can you do to be helpful to somebody who's lost somebody close to them and they're grieving. And the way we would go about that is not give them a list of questions or a list of tips of how you help people, but we'd ask people to share about a significant loss they had if they were comfortable, and what did people do that you appreciated, and what were things that weren't helpful. And it was always a challenging session to lead. There was a lot of emotion in the group. There was a lot of support in the group, a lot of response to people. But what was so powerful about it was two things from a reflection standpoint. One is that people were learning what actually had worked in people's lives, not from a piece of paper, but when somebody says it with all that emotion about what it meant that somebody did, you really got it. The other thing is that I think what we'd see is people would sometimes say, like, I had 3 friends with terminal illness and I never went to see any of them because I didn't know what to say. And people are uncomfortable with the depth of emotion. And what would happen in those groups is people were drenched in the emotion of what you need. To stay in that group, you have to learn to be comfortable with the emotions that are going on. And people saw that people survive. People are actually very tough. They're very resilient. And so they experienced, in a sense, the ability to talk about those issues in a real way, which I think would be much more likely to transfer than in their own lives. So in terms of reflection, I like to, there are a lot of people in service, I think it's easy in service learning to claim that I started this or I did this. I'm never sure what I do, what influence it has. I hope it has influence, but that's not up to me. That's a higher power. But in the mid-90s, we wrote that piece about reflection and emphasized, we would use Play-Doh and songs and drawing and many different kinds of approaches in that. I like to think that we help spread that notion, which is very common today, of using multiple intelligences. And clearly that's the way to go. That's what you want to do. People make sense of the world and they express themselves in their own unique way. The more options, the more power.